Hey guys, tonight we're going to tread softly into the dusty realm of Greek myth, where punishment is eternal, the gods are petty, and well, you're about to find out how far cleverness can get you before it turns around and bites you. You're standing barefoot on rough stone. It's cold, like the chill of marble in a forgotten temple, but there's sweat on your palms. Before you, a boulder looms smooth in some places, jagged in others, and impossibly massive. Its surface reflects faint light, as though it's absorbed centuries of moonlight and mockery. Your back throbs from the effort of pushing it again and again. Up the slope, always up. This isn't the first time. It won't be the last. The slope rises endlessly. Every time you near the top, just when your knees quiver and hope flickers, the rock trembles, shudders, and tumbles back down with a deafening crash. And so you trudge after it, calves burning, shoulders tight, a muttered curse forming under your breath. There's a faint wind brushing your face now. It carries whispers not from mortals, but from above. You know they're watching. The gods, always watching. You let out a dry chuckle. They think they've won, you mutter. But I've beaten them before. And in that moment, your mind drifts back not to the endless slope and stone, but to the days when you, Sisyphus, king of Corinth, still walked among mortals and bent even the divine to your will. You weren't born a hero or a villain. You were, if we're honest, a king with too much ambition and a tongue sharp enough to split hairs. Back then, Corinth sparkled under your rule. Its marble streets lined with traders, thieves, and poets reciting verses about how Sisyphus builds ships that touch the horizon. You were proud, perhaps too proud, but clever. You could talk a snake out of its venom and convince an enemy to surrender his sword just to hear you explain why he shouldn't use it. But cleverness has a price, and the gods? They don't like mortals who outsmart them. It started, as so many Greek tragedies do, with Zeus and his wandering eye. He kidnapped Aegina, daughter of the river god Sisyphus, because of course he did. Honestly, at this point, Zeus's antics deserve their own soap opera, keeping up with the Olympians. Anyway, Sisyphus came thundering to Corinth, searching for his missing daughter. You saw an opportunity. Ah, mighty river god, you sighed, voice dripping with false sympathy. Perhaps I could help you, for a price. Sisyphus narrowed his watery eyes. Speak. I know where Zeus took her. But my city's water supply is, shall we say, lacking. Perhaps a fresh spring in Corinth? And just like that, you struck a bargain with a god. You pointed the way. Sisyphus surged off in a frothing rage to confront Zeus. And from that day, Corinth enjoyed a sparkling new spring, while you enjoyed a smug little victory. Of course Zeus found out. He always does. And his thunderous fury made even Mount Olympus tremble. Sisyphus, he roared, that mortal has betrayed me. Historians still argue whether Zeus's anger was because of your betrayal or sheer embarrassment at being caught. Either way, you painted a big, glowing target on your own back, but you didn't care. Not yet. You were still smiling, still confident that words could save you from anything, even death. And death, as it turned out, was coming for you next. Thanatos, the god of death himself, arrived at your palace one dusky evening. He wasn't much to look at, gaunt, pale, with eyes as hollow as the grave. A chain dangled from his skeletal fingers, clinking softly like distant funeral bells. Sisyphus, he rasped. It's time. You could have gone quietly, could have accepted the inevitable, but where's the fun in that? Instead, you put on your most charming smile. Ah, Thanatos, so good of you to visit my humble abode. Can I offer you some wine? A seat by the fire? Thanatos blinked, confused. No mortal had greeted him like this before. You're not afraid? Afraid? Of course not. In fact, I've heard so much about you. May I inspect that chain of yours? Forgive my curiosity, it looks like fine craftsmanship. Thanatos hesitated, then handed you the chain. Perhaps he thought it was harmless. Perhaps he was flattered. Big mistake. The moment his bony fingers released the chain, you lunged, wrapping it around him in a blur. What are you doing?" "Just a little test," you said, tightening the links. "Let's see how you like being bound." And there it was, Death himself, trapped in chains. You stepped back, admiring your handiwork. Comfortable? No? Well, consider this payback for all the mortals you've dragged off screaming. With Thanatos imprisoned, no one could die. At first, it seemed amusing. Soldiers stabbed one another on the battlefield, only to stagger back up, confused and annoyed. Elders with failing bodies lingered in limbo. Even animals, flies, dogs, fish clung stubbornly to life. The world grew crowded, restless. And in Olympus, the gods seethed. Hades, lord of the underworld, was especially displeased. "Release Thanatos at once." He thundered, but you didn't. You liked knowing that, for once, mortals held the power. Perhaps you should have known this victory wouldn't last. You blinked now, staring at the boulder once more. A wry grin tugs at your lips. "Cleverness got me into this," you whisper. "Maybe it'll get me out." The wind picks up, swirling dust around your ankles. Far above, you swear you hear laughter, not friendly, not warm. But for now, you take a deep breath and bend your knees. The boulder isn't going to push itself. The boulder groans as you press your shoulder against its cold, unyielding weight. You can feel every creak in your bones, every crackle of tension in your muscles. The slope rises endlessly, but as you strain, your mind drifts again, not to the present, but to the first time you felt the thrill of defiance, back when you weren't just a punished soul. Back when you were Sisyphus, the trickster king, smiling at the gods as if Olympus itself were your chessboard. You remember the moment vividly. Thanatos still wriggled in the chains like a fish caught in a net. His hollow eyes stared up at you with something between outrage and confusion. You almost pitied him. "Almost, you mortals," he hissed. "You don't understand the balance. You're breaking." "Oh, I understand plenty," you said with a smirk. "Balance is all well and good, but right now, I'm more interested in tipping the scales a bit. Just for fun." Thanatos struggled, the links rattling like distant storm bells. "You can't keep me bound forever," he warned. "Forever?" "No, but long enough to prove that even the gods can be beaten. That I can do." You leaned against the wall of your chamber, admiring the way the lamplight danced off the chains. Thanatos wasn't so frightening up close. His bones seemed brittle, his presence less intimidating now that he couldn't so much as snap his fingers. And outside these walls? The world began to change. At first, it was subtle. An old woman collapsed in the marketplace from sheer exhaustion and then stood up again, confused but very much alive. A soldier fell on his sword in despair, only to rise, clutching his gut, but breathing. Then it spread. Battles raged across Greece as they always did. But now soldiers screamed not in death throes, but in frustration. Spears pierced flesh. Arrows lodged in hearts, but no one fell. Corpses refused to become corpses. Fields became swamps of groaning, bloody, unkillable men. Mothers cradled children who should have slipped away peacefully. Instead, they lingered. Eyes blank and bodies weak, but breathing on and on. It wasn't long before the gods noticed. Hades was the first to voice his fury. His bellow echoed through the underworld. "Where are the dead? My kingdom is empty." No new shades wandered his dark halls. The asphodel meadows lay still, the rivers silent. Cerberus whined at the gates, hungry for work. Hades stormed to Olympus, robes billowing like smoke. "Zeus," he growled. "The mortal king Sisyphus has upset the order. Thanatos has vanished, and no souls are arriving. Do something." Zeus, sitting lazily on his throne with a goblet of nectar, raised an eyebrow. "Thanatos vanished?" "Yes, and I suspect Sisyphus had a hand in it." Historians still argue whether Zeus reacted out of concern for cosmic balance or sheer irritation that a mortal dared meddle in divine affairs. But one thing was certain: Sisyphus had made himself an enemy of Olympus. Meanwhile, back in Corinth, you strolled through your palace gardens like nothing had happened. A servant approached you timidly. "My king," he said, bowing low, "rumors spread that no one can die. Soldiers fight for days without falling, the people. They're frightened." "Frightened?" you said, plucking a fig from a nearby tree. "They should be overjoyed. What's life without the constant shadow of death looming overhead?" But, in truth, you knew this couldn't last. Sooner or later, someone would come looking for Thanatos, and that someone turned out to be Ares. It was a warm afternoon when the god of war burst into your throne room. He didn't bother knocking, gods rarely do, Sisyphus. Ares barked, his crimson cape flaring like fire. "Where is he? Who?" You asked innocently, tossing the fig core aside. "Don't play coy, mortal. Where is Thanatos?" You gave him your best wide-eyed expression. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." Ares' fingers twitched on the hilt of his sword. "Do not test me." But you weren't afraid, not yet. You leaned forward on your throne, resting your chin in your palm. Ares, god of war, reduced to playing errand boy for Hades. How amusing. For a moment, you thought he might strike you down then and there, but even Ares couldn't kill where death was missing. Instead, he growled like a caged lion and stormed out, vowing that Olympus would have its revenge. When the gods finally discovered Thanatos bound in your dungeons, they were livid. Zeus thundered, "Release him at once, Sisyphus, or face our wrath." You could feel their eyes on you, heavy as storm clouds. But still, you smiled. "Of course, great Zeus. I would never dream of defying you," you said with mock humility. "But tell me, how do I know that once I free him, you won't strike me down immediately?" The silence that followed told you all you needed to know. So you struck a deal. "Let me live a little longer," you said, "and I will free Thanatos." It wasn't so much a request as a challenge. And to your astonishment, Zeus agreed. Perhaps he wanted the mess cleaned up swiftly. Perhaps he thought he could kill you later. Either way, you had won for now. You ordered Thanatos released, and he slithered away with a glare that could strip flesh from bone. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Perhaps," you said, brushing dust from your robes. "But not today." Back in the present, you dig your heels into the dirt and shove. The boulder groans again, inching upward. Your muscles scream. "You've been here before," you remind yourself. "Outwitted them before." The wind whispers in your ear, almost like Thanatos' voice. "You won't escape this time, Sisyphus." You grit your teeth. "Watch me." The stone slips. Your foot skids on loose gravel, and for a terrifying moment, it feels like the whole world might topple backward with it. But you dig in, bare toes gripping for purchase, and strain harder. The boulder halts, balanced precariously. A sigh escapes you, half relief, half irritation. "Not yet," you whisper to yourself. "Not yet." And as you heave the rock higher, sweat stinging your eyes, your thoughts drift again. You've escaped death before, twice in fact. Once by chaining Thanatos like a mutt at heel. But even after that stunt, even after making the gods grind their divine teeth in fury, you weren't content to stop. It began, as so many mistakes do, with a funeral, your funeral. Thanatos, once freed, had returned to you with vengeance in his hollow eyes. He came like a shadow at dusk, seeping through the cracks in your chamber walls. "This time," he said, voice cold as winter's breath, "there will be no chains, no tricks. You will come quietly, or I will drag you screaming." You raised your hands in mock surrender. Quietly then. No need for theatrics. And so your soul slipped from your body like mist. Corinth wept. The great king Sisyphus was dead, or so they thought. In the underworld, Hermes escorted you across the Styx, the river's dark waters whispering secrets of countless lost souls. The air smelled of damp earth and despair. Shades wandered the banks, their faces pale masks of longing. Hades sat on his throne of obsidian, his gaze heavy-lidded but sharp. Beside him, Persephone's fingers traced idle patterns on her gown, her face a blank mask. "Sisyphus," Hades said, voice deep and smooth as rolling stone. "You've been expected." "An honor, my lord," you replied, bowing low. Hades frowned. "Few call it that. Now, if you'd been wise, you might have accepted your fate then and there. But wisdom had never been your strong suit, not. When there were opportunities to outwit even death itself, you leaned forward conspiratorially. "My lord, might I have a word in private? About my wife?" Hades raised an eyebrow. "Your wife?" "Yes, my queen. I fear she's dishonored." "You!" Persephone glanced up, her curiosity piqued. Here's where your genius or sheer audacity shone brightest. You spun a tale of woe, that before your death, you had instructed your wife to honor your passing with proper funeral rites. Yet, out of negligence or spite, she had failed. No libations poured. No coin placed beneath your tongue for Charon. No offerings at the family hearth. She left my body unburied. You cried, laying it on thick. A king left to rot like a common thief. Even Persephone seemed moved. That is a grave insult. Indeed, you said, voice trembling with false grief. Allow me to return briefly to chastise her, to arrange my burial properly. Once the rites are complete, I will come back willingly. Hades considered. Historians still argue whether he was fooled by your theatrics or simply too distracted to care. Either way, he nodded. Very well, one visit. Then you return. You bowed so low your nose brushed the cavern floor. The moment you slipped back into your body, you gasped for air like a drowning man. Servants screamed and dropped there. Trays, wine spilling across marble floors. My king lives. One cried. You sat up grinning. Yes, yes, now fetch me wine. The good kind. And so Sisyphus cheated death a second time. You didn't return to the underworld, of course. Why would you? Instead, you took to your throne as if nothing had happened. You hosted feasts. You passed laws. You even commissioned a poet to compose an epic about your miraculous resurrection. But the gods don't forgive. And they certainly don't forget that it wasn't long before Hermes came for you again. This time, he didn't bother knocking. He appeared in your chamber like a breeze slipping through an open window. Sisyphus, he said softly, it's time. You opened your mouth to protest, but Hermes cut you off with a raised finger. No speeches, no bargains. Come. There was steel beneath his calm tone, and you realized too late that the game was over. Back in the present, your knees quake as the boulder trembles under your hands. Your fingers dig into the stone's pitted surface, nails cracking. Not yet, you murmured out above. A faint rumble rolls through the sky. You know that sound. It's Zeus's laughter, low, cruel, and distant. The climb continues. Pebbles skitter down the slope around your feet. You glance at the boulder's smooth curve, tracing the tiny fissures and scars you've memorized over countless cycles. Once, you were king of cleverness, a mortal who chained death, a man who tricked the rulers of the underworld. Now, you are something else. The gods think they've broken you. But even as you strain and sweat, there's a flicker of defiance in your chest. You're still Sisyphus. And you're still thinking. Perhaps there's a way out, you whisper to the boulder. There's always a way, but the rock says nothing. It only waits for the moment your strength falters. You press your shoulder harder into the stone, as if trying to fuse your body with its cold surface. Your lungs burn. Your legs shake. And yet you keep pushing, inch by inch, higher up the endless slope. A pebble rolls down past your foot. You don't watch it fall. You already know where it will end, back at the bottom, in the same dust where you began. The boulder hasn't rolled yet. Not this time, but it will. It always does. And as you strain against its weight, you think of how your cleverness once brought the mortal world to its knees, not through war, nor famine, but through the sheer absurd chaos of a world where no one could die. It started subtly, like a quiet ripple in a pond. An old fisherman, long resigned to his failing heart, collapsed on the docks one morning. His neighbors wailed and gathered around him, only to gasp as he sat up minutes later, blinking in confusion. I thought I was gone," he whispered, clutching his chest. "You were pale as marble," cried his wife. "No breath, no pulse." But the fisherman lived on. And soon, stories like his spread across Greece. Then came the battlefield horrors. 2 rival kings clashed on the plains, beneath a blood-red sky. Spears flew, swords clanged, and men fell screaming, only to rise again moments later, clutching gaping wounds but unable to cross into death's shadow. By nightfall, the field was a grotesque tableau of agony, soldiers crawling, groaning, bleeding, endlessly yet refusing to die. "Strike him again," one warrior shouted, swinging his blade desperately. "Useless," his comrade groaned, wiping blood from his face. "We can't finish them. We can't finish anyone." Even the vultures circled hesitantly, unsure what to make of the writhing mass below. In Olympus, the gods watched with growing unease. "Look at them," Hera spat, her lip curling. "Maggots squirming in their own filth, all because of that wretched mortal." Ares, god of war, slammed his fist against the table. "I've waited centuries for battles like these, yet not a single soul makes it to Hades' gate. What is war without death?" Hades himself stood silent in the corner, his black robes billowing despite the still air. His eyes, however, were burning coals. "My kingdom is empty," he growled. "The rivers are dry, the fields of asphodel lie fallow. I demand justice, brother." Zeus leaned back in his throne, his golden beard catching the flicker of torchlight. "I will deal with Sisyphus," he said at last. His voice was calm, but the storm clouds gathering behind his eyes betrayed the truth. The king of the gods was seething. Back in Corinth, you reclined on your throne, plucking grapes from a golden platter. Is it not glorious? You said to no one in particular, a world where no one fears death. But outside your palace walls, the streets teemed with unrest. The elderly, frail but unyielding, wandered aimlessly in pain. Mothers cradled sick children who lingered on the edge of life, their tiny bodies refusing to let go. Farmers cursed as diseased cattle stumbled about, unable to perish yet unable to provide milk or meat. "What kind of world is this?" muttered one townsman in the agora. "An unnatural one," another spat. "Sisyphus has brought doom upon us all." When word reached you that Zeus himself was preparing to act, you didn't flinch, you smirked. "Let him come," you murmured. "I've danced with gods before." But deep down, even you knew you were nearing the end of your gambit. The first sign of Zeus's anger came not in thunder or lightning, but in the form of Hermes, swift-footed and sharp-eyed, striding into your chamber one crisp morning. "Sisyphus," he said without preamble. "Ah, Hermes," you replied, all silk and charm. "Have you come to drink with me? To enjoy this lovely sunrise?" Hermes didn't smile. "You've caused enough mischief. Thanatos is freed. Now it's time you return to the underworld." You sighed dramatically, placing a hand over your heart. "Return? But I've barely had time to enjoy my second life." "Don't test me," Hermes warned. "The gods are patient, but even they have limits." "Then let's push those limits," you murmured, though your voice lacked its usual bravado. Later that night, you found yourself pacing in your bedchamber, the fire crackling low in the hearth. You weren't afraid, not exactly. But for the first time in years, you began to consider the possibility that you might have gone too far. You glanced at your reflection in a bronze mirror. The lines on your face seemed deeper. Your eyes, though, Sharp held a flicker of doubt. Is this the price of cleverness? You whispered, now, as you dig your heels into the slope and shove the boulder another inch. That same doubt gnaws at you, but alongside it burns something else. Something harder. Defiance. The gods think they've beaten you, trapped you in this endless cycle. But they're wrong. They don't know your mind is still turning, still plotting. You'll find a way. You always do. And if not, then you'll push this cursed stone with a grin on your face, just to spite them. The boulder shifts again, and you feel its immense weight pressing down, threatening to roll back and crush you flat against the jagged slope. Your arms tremble, sweat dripping into your eyes, stinging, but you don't let go. Not yet. Above you, the peak glimmers faintly in the distance, almost mocking. You know what happens next. You've known it for what feels like centuries. And still, you push, because you remember. You remember the moment when everything began to unravel, when Zeus's wrath, long simmering, finally boiled over. It started with a storm. Not the gentle, cleansing rain Corinth's farmers prayed for, but a violent tempest that tore tiles from rooftops and flung olive trees into the sea. The skies above your city boiled black, jagged with lightning. The people panicked. Sisyphus has angered the gods, they cried. We are cursed. But you sat on your throne, lips curled. In that trademark smirk, they think they can frighten me with thunder and rain? You muttered, please, I've faced death itself, twice. You poured yourself wine from a golden crater and took a long, slow sip as if to prove the gods' power meant nothing. But deep down, you could feel it. This time was different. This wasn't petty mischief from Hermes, nor Ares blustering in his crimson cloak. This was Zeus himself. And Zeus did not forgive. On the third night of the storm, you woke to find your chamber full of light, blinding, golden light that burned like the heart of the sun. A voice thundered, Sisyphus. You shielded your eyes, but the brilliance seared through your eyelids. King of cunning, master of deceit. You mocked the gods no longer. Zeus, you said softly, to what do I owe this honor? Even facing annihilation, your tongue couldn't resist. A massive hand appeared in the golden radiance, plucking you from your bed like a child's doll. Your cleverness ends now, Zeus growled, and then you were soaring sky, sea, and land, spinning beneath you. When you landed, it wasn't on the marble floors of Olympus or even the shadowed banks of the Styx. It was in the underworld, but deeper, darker, colder than you had ever imagined. Tartarus. The prison of titans and monsters. Chains clinked in the distance. A fetid wind carried the sound of tortured groans. Somewhere far below, you swore you heard the faint thump of a colossal heartbeat. There, in the blackness, you stood before Hades once more. This time, there were no deals. No sly smiles, only judgment. You thought you were clever, Hades said, his voice calm, but laced with something sharper than anger. Chaining death, tricking my queen, mocking Olympus itself. You opened your mouth to speak, but his gaze silenced you. Cleverness cannot save you now. It was then that the punishment was pronounced. You will labor for eternity, Hades said. You will push a boulder up a hill, knowing it will never stay. You will strive without rest, without reward, without end. And why? You asked, unable to stop yourself. Because you sought to cheat death. Now you will crave it, but never find it. Historians still argue whether your punishment was meant as pure torture or a twisted form of poetic justice. Some say the gods wanted you to suffer endlessly. Others whisper that they admired your defiance in a way and gave you a task worthy of your stubbornness. But you didn't care about their motives, not then. You only cared about one thing, escaping. Now in this moment, your palms are raw. The boulder feels heavier than ever, but in the corners of your mind, the old gears turn. Could you beat them again? Could you twist even this punishment into victory? The wind howls. Dust stings your face. You laugh softly, though your throat is parched. Perhaps there's still a way. Perhaps. But even as you say it, the boulder quivers. Your foot slips, and with a rumble like distant thunder, the stone rolls backward, dragging you with it. You tumble down the slope, dust filling your mouth, your lungs at the bottom. You lie there, staring up at the endless hill, and then, slowly, you rise again, double quotes, not yet, you whisper, your jaw tight. Not yet, because the gods might control your body, but your mind? That's still yours. You're back at the bottom. Again, the boulder rests silently in the dust as if mocking you. Its smooth curve catches the faint, ghostly light of this strange underworld. Not sunlight, not moonlight, but something colder. You take a breath. Your ribs ache, your shoulders scream, but you roll your neck and set your jaw. Fine, you mutter. We'll do it again. And you start pushing with each heave. Memories bubble up slippery, insistent. Not of the punishment, but of the moments when your clever tongue kept you one step ahead of the gods. Like the time you bargained with Persephone. It was strange. Standing before her in the underworld's throne room, Hades sat to her right, stoic and silent, his presence as heavy as iron. But Persephone was different. Her gaze was steady but curious. She had the look of someone who'd seen too much to be surprised, yet still found mortals amusing. So she said, her voice like the rustle of autumn leaves, "You would ask a favor of me?" You smiled, tilting your head in practiced humility. "Not a favor, my queen, a negotiation." This was after your first escape, after you had tricked Thanatos, and then slipped back to the mortal world from Hades' domain by spinning that pitiful tale about your wife's failure to bury your body. You knew returning to Corinth would be dangerous. The gods would come for you eventually, but you weren't ready to surrender. Not yet. So you devised a plan, a bold one. When Persephone came to inspect the souls in her care, you waited patiently, feigning repentance. "My queen," you said softly, "surely you see I am not like the others here. I am not some wandering shade, clutching at memories of lost loves or grudges. I am useful." "Useful?" She echoed, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," you said, leaning in. "Hades rules the dead. You rule beside him. But do you not miss the world above? The flowers, the sun, the sound of laughter?" Persephone's lips tightened. "I could be your eyes there," you continued. "Your voice, your agent. Let me return, and I'll see to it that your influence spreads among the living. Offerings at your shrines, hymns in your name. The mortals will remember Persephone not only as queen of the underworld, but as a goddess of renewal and life." She studied you for a long moment, and then, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps out of boredom, she said, "Go, but remember, a single misstep, and even I cannot save you." Historians still argue whether Persephone pitied you, admired your audacity, or simply wanted to see what chaos you'd cause. Whatever her reason, it worked. You were alive again. In Corinth, you wasted no time spreading whispers of Persephone's power. "She's the goddess of life's return," you told priests and merchants alike. "When flowers bloom in spring, it is Persephone's touch. Offer to her, and your fields will thrive." Soon, tiny shrines sprang up. Bread, pomegranates, and bowls of wine were left out in her honor. And for a time, you imagined you had bought yourself more than just life. You had bought an ally. But Olympus was watching. Zeus had warned you before. Now his patience was gone. It was Hermes, again, who appeared at your side one night. You were in your bedchamber, reclining with a goblet of wine, savoring the hum of cicadas outside. "I'm beginning to think you enjoy these visits," you said dryly. Hermes didn't smile. "This is the last one, Sisyphus," he said. "Last? You've cheated death twice. You've made deals with Persephone. You've upset the order of things." "Order is overrated," you murmured. Hermes's eyes hardened. "You don't understand. This time, there's no bargain. no reprieve. The gods have spoken. And before you could answer, the world around you dissolved into golden light. You're jolted back to the present as your foot slips on loose gravel. The boulder lurches, and you dig in with all your strength to stop it from rolling back down. Your chest heaves. Your hands ache. But still, you smile. They thought I'd give up before. You whisper to no one. They don't know me very well. You push on. Pebbles scatter around your bare feet. Above you, the slope stretches endlessly, vanishing into pale mist. Maybe there's no top. Or maybe, just maybe, there's a crack in the gods' perfect punishment. You've found cracks before. Why not now? A faint sound drifts down the slope. Laughter. High. Cold and unmistakably divine. They're watching, you mutter. Good, let them. The boulder feels heavier today. Or maybe it's just your mind, weighted down by too many thoughts and memories clawing their way to the surface. Your bare feet dig into the cold, unyielding slope. Gravel shifts under your heels. The strain in. Your shoulders burns like fire. But you keep going. Push. Inch by inch. And all the while, you remember the first time you tried something. Different. The first time you wondered, what if I don't push? At first, you did exactly as they wanted. You woke. You found the boulder waiting, its hulking mass nestled in the dust. You bent your back, dug in your heels, and shoved until your muscles screamed. Again and again, the same climb. Each time you neared the top, you felt a flicker of hope, a foolish little spark that maybe, just maybe, this time the boulder would stay. But the moment you straightened your spine, the stone shuddered, groaned, and rolled back down. Pull in your heart with it. It was maddening, but maddening doesn't break you. One day, if day means anything in this gray place, you stopped. You crossed your arms. I'm not doing it. You announced aloud, though no one was there to hear. The boulder sat silently. You sat down beside it. Go on then. Let's see what happens. And for a moment, just a brief, dangerous moment, you thought you'd beaten them. But then the air shifted. It grew heavy, like a storm building in the distance. The shadows lengthened. A chill ran down your spine, and you heard it. Push. Whispered. Soft. Malevolent. You pretended not to hear. I said. The voice rumbled again. Push. And suddenly, agony tore through your body, not like a whip or a blade, but something deeper, more insidious. Your lungs seized. Your muscles locked. Pain radiated from your very soul. You collapsed, gasping, clawing at the dirt. Fine. You spat. Fine, you bastards. You crawled to the boulder, wrapped your trembling hands around its cold edge, and began to push. Instantly, the pain faded. The air lightened. The voice fell silent. You understood then. This wasn't just physical punishment. It was control. Total, absolute control. They didn't want you dead. They wanted you moving, striving, hoping. Forever. Historians still debate whether the gods intended your punishment as poetic justice, or if it was born of sheer cruelty. Some say they admired your cleverness in a way that they crafted a punishment as clever as you had been in life. Others believe they simply hated you, and this was their way of making you break. But you don't care about their motives. You care about finding the cracks in their game. You remember trying again later. This time, you didn't stop. You pushed, but not up. Instead, you tried to shove the boulder sideways, off the path. Perhaps if you rolled it far enough, the hill would lose its power over you. For hours, or was it years? You strained, grunting, twisting, forcing the stone toward the edge. At last, with one final roar of effort, the boulder tipped over the lip of the slope. It fell, and fell, and fell. You waited, chest heaving, for the sound of it smashing on the rocks below. But there was no crash. Just silence. Then you turned, and there it was. The boulder, sitting neatly in its place at the bottom of the hill, as though it had never moved. You laughed. You couldn't help. Oh, very clever. you said aloud. Well played, gods. Your laughter echoed off the empty slopes. And for a moment, it almost felt like you were winning. Now in this endless present, you shove the boulder upward again. Gravel skitters beneath your feet. Your back aches, but your mind, your precious, restless mind, is still working. There has to be a weakness, even if you have to claw it out of this cursed hill one pebble at a time. Go on. Then you whisper, watch me. Watch me figure you out. Somewhere above, you hear a faint chuckle. The gods are listening. Good. Let them. The boulder grinds against the slope, its weight sending vibrations up through your bones. Your breath rasps in your throat as you dig in, step after step, inching it higher. But as you push, you think not of the climb, not of the stone, but of time. And how, even here, you tried to bend it to your will. The first thing you noticed in Tartarus was how time slipped. At first, it was like life, sunrise, sunset, meals dividing the hours. But here, there was no sun, no moon, no bread or wine to mark the passing moments. The only rhythm was the climb, the roll, the descent, and the climb again. So you began to count. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Perhaps you thought, if you could measure time, you could master it. You started with a simple strategy: move slowly. If you slowed to a crawl, if you took each push as if wading through syrup, maybe the gods' punishment would unravel. For what is eternity after all, but an endless stretch of moments? Break the rhythm, and perhaps you break eternity itself. So you experimented. One day, if such a word means anything here, you took only 5 steps, then rested your arms across the boulder and waited. Minutes passed. Hours, days? You couldn't be sure. You stared into the misty abyss below, listening for signs of divine intervention. Nothing. You smirked. Perhaps they're asleep. But then the whisper came again. Push. Soft at first, almost gentle. Push. Louder. Now insistent. And then the pain-searing, soul-deep agony, as if your very essence were being unraveled. You dropped to your knees, clawing at the earth. Fine. You shouted hoarsely. You win for now. The moment you shoved the stone forward, the pain vanished. You tried speeding up next, running at full tilt. For hours or moments, you hurled yourself against the slope like a madman, lungs burning, muscles trembling. If you climbed fast enough, maybe you could catch the gods off guard. Maybe the stone wouldn't roll back this time. But no matter how quickly you reached the summit, the outcome was the same. The boulder quivered at the peak, then tumbled away, pulling your hope with it. Historians still debate whether your experiments were acts of desperation or defiance. Some say you'd finally broken under the weight of the punishment. Others insist you were probing the system, testing the gods' prison for cracks. You prefer the latter theory. One time, you tried stopping altogether, not out of rebellion, but out of sheer exhaustion. You collapsed against the stone, chest heaving, sweat running into your eyes. Do it. Then, you muttered to the empty air. Strike me down. End it. But no thunderbolt came. No hand reached from the clouds. Just the whisper. Push. You laughed bitterly. Of course, you said. Not even death wants me now. Eventually, you began to experiment not with speed, but with intent. What if you didn't hate the climb? What if you welcomed it? So you smiled. You whispered encouragements to the stone as you pushed. Come on, old friend. Let's see how high we can get today. You laughed when it slipped, chuckled. When it rolled. At first, you thought this might drive the gods mad. How could they torment you if you embraced the torment? But then you realized something unsettling. They wanted you to hope. They wanted you to believe there was meaning in the climb. And in that realization, you felt a chill deeper than Tartarus's shadows. Now in this endless moment, you pushed the boulder forward again, gravel crunching underfoot. You know the summit is close. Though close has lost all meaning. Maybe the gods are watching, maybe they're smiling, or maybe, you murmur through clenched teeth, I'm still smarter than you. The stone shifts. For a heartbeat, you imagine it staying. You imagine stepping back, watching it settle into place at the peak. Freedom. Release. But then comes the familiar sound, the low, grinding rumble. Your stomach twists, and down it goes. Again. You follow, feet skidding in the dirt, limbs heavy with exhaustion but not surrender. Not yet, you whisper, as you always do. Your lips curl into a grin, tight, defiant, but still a grin. There's always another way. And in your mind, the experiments continue. The gods may have your body, but your mind? That's still yours. The boulder digs into your palms, cold and unyielding. You can feel its weight pressing against your chest as you lean into it, forcing your legs to keep moving, even as your mind whispers stop. But stopping isn't an option, not anymore. Not when you've already tried. And failed. You remember the day you decided to test the gods themselves. If you couldn't outpace the boulder, if you couldn't slow the climb or sidestep the punishment, maybe, just maybe, you could outwit the ones watching. Because they were watching. You felt it in the air sometimes, a subtle shift, a ripple like the faint buzz of bees near your ears. They weren't just punishing you. They were entertained. So you began experimenting. At first, you tried to bore them. You hummed tuneless songs as you pushed. You whistled. You told yourself long, meandering stories aloud, epics about your youth, about clever deals and golden feasts. You gave your boulder a name. Come on, Rocco, you'd mutter. Don't let them get to you. We've got this. Once, you even stopped mid-climb and began carving patterns into the dust with a stick. Spirals, circles, a crude likeness of Zeus with his beard trailing down to his knees. Maybe if I bore them enough, you muttered, they'll wander off. Maybe I'll be alone. But then came the whisper, soft and venomous. Push. So boredom didn't work. You tried insults next. Oh, mighty gods, you said one day. Do you enjoy watching this? Is this your grand entertainment? One mortal pushing a rock forever? Do you sit on Olympus, placing bets on how long I'll last? Hera, did you wager 10 years? Ares, 20? You laughed bitterly, pathetic. You call me cunning? At least I had originality. This punishment is as stale as week-old bread. For a moment, the air grew heavy. A low rumble echoed through the mist, so deep it vibrated in your bones. Was it thunder? Or laughter? You couldn't tell. Historians still argue about this part of your story. Some say you were truly breaking then, that your mockery was the desperate howl of a man stretched past sanity. Others claim it was deliberate, a tactic to provoke the gods into making a mistake. You liked the second theory better. Next, you tried pleading. Please, you whispered to the unseen sky, your voice cracking. I've learned my lesson. I've suffered enough. Let me go. You let the despair creep into your words, knowing how gods love to see mortals beg, but you didn't mean it. Not really, you just wanted to see what they would do. They did nothing. No voice answered. No. Lightning bolt struck. Just silence. And the boulder. So you began testing the punishment itself. What if you sat at the bottom of the hill and refused to climb? Agony. What if you climbed without the boulder, leaving it behind? The moment you reached the summit, you found it waiting there, impossibly, mockingly blocking your path. What if you pushed the stone sideways again, into the abyss? It always returned, nestled in the dust like a loyal hound. One day, you even tried crushing yourself beneath it. You let go on purpose. The boulder rolled backward, and you stood still, arms wide, welcoming the impact. Perhaps they wanted you alive. Perhaps they needed you to push, but as the stone smashed into your chest, there was no escape. No release. You didn't die. You simply woke up at the bottom again, bruised and gasping, the boulder waiting patiently by your side. Fine, you said aloud, coughing. You win this round. But even as you spoke, a flicker of defiance burned in your chest. If they thought they could break your mind, they were wrong. Now in the endless present, you shove the boulder another foot forward, the slope steepening as you climb. You can feel their gaze. It prickles along your skin like heat from a distant fire. They're still watching. You whisper. You grin, though your lips are cracked and dry. Good. Watch me all you like. This isn't over. You're still thinking. Still scheming. Still Sisyphus. And you've never been more dangerous than when cornered. The hill stretches on endlessly, the slope so steep now that your feet slide backward with every step. You grit your teeth, pressing your whole body into the boulder, feeling the cold, rough surface biting at your palms. Above you, the mist curls like lazy smoke, concealing the summit. You've been here countless times, close enough to imagine the peak, close enough to taste freedom, and yet, you already know how this ends. But even knowing doesn't stop your mind from turning, clawing for some advantage. There has to be a way out. You tried everything. Defiance, mockery, bargaining, even obedience. But the gods' trap held fast. The boulder never stayed. The hill never ended. The punishment never changed. There was a time you thought about embracing it. Maybe this is the answer. You whispered once as you pushed, your feet sliding on loose gravel. If I stop resisting, if I stop hating this task, maybe it loses its power over me. So you tried. You forced a smile onto your cracked lips. You told yourself the climb was a meditation, that every strain in your muscles was a hymn to endurance. You greeted the boulder like an old friend each time you returned to the base. Well, here we are again, Rocco, you'd say. Another day, another push. You whispered to the gods no. To yourself, that maybe meaning wasn't found in winning or escaping. Maybe meaning was in the struggle. Historians still debate this chapter of your myth. Was Sisyphus truly finding peace? Or was he playing a deeper game, pretending even to himself, while still searching for cracks in the punishment? You suspect the truth is both. It worked for a while. When you smiled, the gods couldn't tell if it was from acceptance or rebellion. When you whispered encouragement to the boulder, they couldn't tell if you meant it or if you were mocking them. Push, push. You murmured. We'll make it this time, you and I. And sometimes, in your most dangerous moments, you almost believed yourself. But the problem with surrender is that it feels too much like dying, and you've never been good at dying. One endless cycle blurred into another. You began to notice things, tiny details in the punishment itself. A faint groove in the path, worn from the boulder's countless ascents and descents. A subtle warmth in the stone, as if it remembered your touch. And in the mist above, flickers of movement, shadows, watching eyes. They weren't just observing you. They were waiting. One day, or was it a century? You reached the summit again. You set your feet firmly. You gave the boulder one final heave, forcing it onto the flat ground at the peak. For the briefest, most fragile instant, it stayed. Your heart stopped. You stepped back slowly, scarcely daring to breathe. You whispered. Did I do it? But before you could take another breath, the boulder shuddered. It rolled back down. You didn't scream. Not this time. You simply watched it go. A quiet chuckle escaping your cracked lips. Of course, you murmured. Of course. And you began the long walk back down. Now in the present, you push again. Your hands are raw. Your shoulders ache, but your mind? Your mind still burns bright. Maybe I can't escape, you whisper. But I can make them regret giving me this punishment. You imagine the gods watching you from their golden thrones, wondering, has he surrendered? Or is he still plotting? You smirk. Keep wondering, you say softly. That's my victory. Above, the mist swirls like a living thing. A faint sound carries through it. Laughter? Wind? Or perhaps your own voice, echoing back. No matter. You push on. Always. Pushing. Always thinking. Because even here, even in eternity, there's still a game to play, and you've never lost one yet. The boulder creaks as it grinds over another jagged ridge in the slope. Your legs shake, your arms feel like molten lead. But still, you press forward. Each breath burns in your chest. Above you, the summit disappears into gray mist. You've been here so many times you can trace every curve of the hill in your mind. And as you climb, your thoughts turn, as they always do, to the ones who put you here, the gods. You've had centuries, millennia, perhaps, to think about them, to pull apart their power, their pride, their whims. At first, you thought of them as invincible, distant forces that could not be challenged. But the more you reflected, the more cracks you began to see. After all, you had defied them. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. You outwitted Thanatos. You slipped from Hades' grasp. You bargained with Persephone. And even now, as their so-called punishment grinds on, you're still yourself. Still thinking. Still scheming. There was a moment, long after you first arrived in Tartarus, when you considered their motives. Why this? You muttered aloud as you pushed. Why not simply obliterate me? Why not wipe me from existence entirely? No answer came, but the question lingered. Perhaps they couldn't destroy you, or perhaps they didn't want to. Historians still argue about this point. Some claim the gods spared you because they admired your cunning, even as they punished it. Others believe it was cruelty, pure and simple. But another theory has begun to grow in your mind. What if they're as trapped as you? You picture Zeus on his golden throne, endlessly throwing lightning bolts at mortals who anger him. Hera, forever scheming against her husband's infidelities. Ares, locked in an eternal cycle of war and slaughter. Even Hades sitting in his cold, empty halls, counting the shades as they shuffle in. Are they truly free? Or are they prisoners of their own roles, just as much as you are? One day, or what you think of as a day, you spoke directly to them. You're not so different from me, are you? You said aloud, your voice echoing off the barren slope. You think you're punishing me. But this isn't about justice. It's about keeping the game going. Your lips curled into a grin. Because without mortals like me to defy you, what are you? Just bored immortals staring at an empty sky. The air grew heavy then. You felt their attention, sharp as a knife against your skin. A distant rumble, thunder, or perhaps laughter rolled through the mist. They didn't strike you down. They didn't speak. But you couldn't shake the sense that, in some strange way, they had heard you, and that maybe, just maybe, you'd struck a nerve. Now, as you push again, you whisper to the unseen sky. Do you ever get tired, gods, of playing the same roles over and over? Of being trapped in your own stories? Your hands ache. Your shoulders scream, but your grin never fades. Perhaps you should thank me, you murmur. At least I make things interesting. The boulder shifts beneath your grip. You dig your heels in, steadying it, forcing it forward another few inches. Above, the mist stirs. You swear you hear voices low, murmuring, too faint to make out. Are they arguing? Are they watching you more closely now? Good. Let them watch. Because if you can make them doubt even for a moment, then maybe you've already won. You've been their prisoner for an eternity. But that doesn't mean you have to play the role. They wrote for you. You're Sisyphus. And Sisyphus always finds a way. Horrifying instant. You feel its weight shift against you, ready to crush you beneath it. But you recover, barely, gritting your teeth and forcing the stone back into place. It's always like this. A delicate balance. A game of inches. And yet, even as your muscles burn and your lungs strain, your mind wanders. Not with fear, not with despair, but with strategy. Because lately, you've begun wondering not if you can escape, but if you can make them break first. It is a passing thought. The gods are watching me, always watching. But what if I'm not the only one playing a game? Perhaps this punishment isn't as seamless as it seems. Perhaps Olympus isn't as united as they'd like you to believe. So you began speaking to them, not begging, Not mocking, but planting seeds. Tiny, barbed seeds that might just sprout into discord. Hera, you said once, your voice echoing off the empty hill. Zeus crafted this punishment, didn't he? It seems like his kind of poetry. You paused, smiling faintly. But if you had designed it, I bet it would have been flawless. You'd never let a mortal keep his wits this long. You waited, imagining her frowning in Olympus's marble halls, her sharp mind gnawing on your words. Another time, you addressed Ares. God of war, you called out, straining as you pushed. Is this the kind of battle you admire? One man versus a rock? Or does this bore you to tears? You pictured him scowling, fingers twitching for his spear. Historians still argue whether Sisyphus's words were clever manipulations or the ramblings of a broken mind. You know the truth. Every syllable was a calculated strike. You didn't stop there. Persephone, you murmured one day, your voice gentle. You showed me mercy once. Do you regret it now? Or do you secretly root for me, even as your husband keeps me here? And to Hades, do you ever tire of this game? I know you prefer order. And yet here I am, defying you still. Is that by design or by accident? Once, in a particularly daring moment, you spoke to Zeus himself. O mighty Zeus, king of gods, breaker of oaths, do you watch me every day, or do you delegate that task to some poor minor deity? You smirked, picturing him bristling on his throne. I wonder, does it bother you? That no matter how many times I fail, I never stop climbing. That I never stop thinking. You know they hear you, because sometimes the air thickens, sometimes the slope trembles beneath your feet, and sometimes, just faintly, you hear voices in the mist. Arguing. You've been testing their patience, testing their unity. And though they haven't struck you down, you can feel something shifting, a crack in their perfect order. Now, as you shove the boulder higher, you whisper again, go on, fight amongst yourselves. You've already lost if you're distracted. You smile through gritted teeth, because the moment you lose focus, that's when I find my opening. The stone wobbles, threatening to roll back, but you hold steady. Above, the mist swirls. Faster now, shapes flickering just out of sight. Perhaps they're arguing again. Perhaps you've finally begun to worm your way into their immortal minds. After all, the gods may have chained your body to this hill, but they'll never chain your cunning. And even eternity might not be long enough to keep Sisyphus down. The slope seems steeper today, though you know better than to trust your senses here. The boulder's surface bites into your raw palms, its cold weight pressing you down like an accusation. Your legs tremble, but you push anyway, because you've begun to sense something new in the air, something fragile and dangerous. A crack, not in the hill, not in the stone, but in them. The gods are faltering. You can feel it. Their punishment hasn't changed, but their attention has. Where once you felt their cold, unified gaze, now you feel gaps, moments when no one seems to be watching, moments when the slope feels just a little less heavy, moments when you almost believe you're alone. It began after your provocations. Whispers in the mist, faint but unmistakable, voices raised in argument. Hera warned you this wouldn't work. Let him rot, what does it matter? You're all fools. He's laughing at us even now. So you pressed harder. One day, you spoke to the empty sky. Perhaps I'm not the only prisoner here. You pushed the boulder another few feet and continued, voice calm and deliberate. Zeus, king of gods, how many centuries have you spent holding your throne, afraid of the next rebellion? Hera, how many schemes have you plotted, only to see them crumble in his shadow? Ares, do you ever long for a war you can't win just to feel alive again? Hades, Persephone, you rule the dead, but are you not dead yourselves? You let the words hang in the mist, and though no voice answered, you felt the slope tremble beneath your feet. Historians still argue about what you were doing then. Were you trying to escape? Or were you trying to pull them down with you? Perhaps both. You began weaving little stories for them as you pushed. Imagine this, gods. You release me. You let me return to the mortal world. I live, I age, I die. You grunted as the boulder caught on a ridge. And with me gone, there's no clever mortal left to defy you. No one to test your power. No one to make you feel important. You laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. Perhaps you need me more than I need you. One time, though time is meaningless here, you stopped mid-climb. You leaned your weight against the stone and whispered, "Do you know what would really drive me mad?" Silence. That this wasn't a punishment at all. That you're not watching. That this climb means nothing. You smirked, feeling a chill ripple through the air. Go on, gods. Prove me wrong. The boulder slipped suddenly, and you had to throw your whole weight against it to keep it from crushing you. Your muscles burned. But your mind raced. Because if the gods were listening, if they cared, then you still had power over them. And if they didn't, then perhaps you were free in a way they could never understand. Now, as you shove the boulder another foot higher, you speak softly. Do you feel it too, gods? The weariness? The endlessness? Above, the mist swirls faster, darker. You think. You see movement figures flickering at the edge of perception. Perhaps they're arguing again. Perhaps you've sown more chaos than even you intended. You smile. Good, you whisper. Break yourselves apart, then we'll see who's truly trapped. The boulder groans, the slope steepens, but your mind burns bright, because even in eternity, even in torment, Sisyphus never stops climbing, not just the hill, but out of the god's grasp. Your fingers are numb, your shoulders scream. Every nerve in your body begs for rest, for release, for anything but this endless climb. And yet, you push, because now more than ever, you feel it, the god's grip slipping. Their punishment was meant to break you, but what if you've broken them instead? It started small, a ripple in the mist, a faint murmur of voices too far to understand, too loud to ignore. You knew then that your words had reached them, and more importantly, you knew they weren't agreeing. Once, when the air was especially heavy, you stopped mid-climb and whispered, "Do you feel it, gods? The crack in your perfect order?" The boulder shifted dangerously, and you shoved it back into place with a grunt. I wonder, which of you will falter first? You could almost hear them arguing above. Hera's sharp voice cutting through Zeus's thunder. Ares bellowing with rage, demanding action. Hades sighing, tired of their squabbles. Even gentle Persephone, perhaps whispering in her husband's ear, "Is this really justice?" Historians still debate this part of the myth. Was Sisyphus delusional, inventing conflict where none existed? Or had he truly shaken Olympus to its core? You prefer to believe the latter. One day, you called out to them again. Do you remember? Why you punished me. You paused, letting your voice carry on the wind. Was it my pride, my cleverness? Or because I reminded you of yourselves? The boulder groaned as you shoved harder. You call me a trickster, a deceiver, but aren't you the same? You laughed, the sound harsh and ragged. Maybe that's why you hate me so much. You see yourselves in me. The mist stirred violently, and for the first time you thought you heard shouting not at you, but at each other. You leaned into the boulder, whispering so softly the gods would have to strain to hear. What happens when one of you takes pity on me? The slope seemed to tilt beneath you, and for a dizzying moment, you felt the boulder grow lighter, but then the weight slammed back, heavier than ever. Still, the idea took root in your mind. If you could turn one god, just one against the others, the whole edifice of your punishment might crumble. You imagined the scene in Olympus, Zeus raging at Hera, coldly accusing her husband of pettiness. Poseidon, smirking at his brother's loss of control. Athena, calculating quietly, wondering if justice was being served or if pride had gone too far. Hades silent, his dark eyes unreadable. Perhaps they'd already begun to fracture. Perhaps you were no longer just a prisoner. Perhaps You were a weapon aimed at the heart of their divine unity. Now, as you push the boulder higher, you smile through cracked lips. Go on, gods, keep fighting. Your voice is barely a whisper, but you know they hear, because the moment you stop watching me is the moment I win. The slope steepens. The boulder quivers, and you can feel it's something about to give. Maybe it's the rock, maybe it's the gods, or maybe it's you, but you'll keep climbing. Because even now, even at the edge of eternity, you've never been so close to victory. The hill looms above you, steeper than ever. The boulder's weight presses down on your spine like a living thing, eager to crush you flat. Every muscle in your body burns, yet you dig your feet into the gravel and heave. You're so close now, not to the summit, but to something else. You can feel it in the air. Crackling like static before a storm. The gods are unraveling, and you're the thread. They never should have pulled. It began with whispers. Now you hear them clearly, voices raised in anger, cutting through the mist. You've toyed with him long enough, Zeus. This isn't justice, it's vanity. Let him rot. He deserves worse than this. Or perhaps he deserves nothing at all. Their arguments swirl around you like smoke. For the first time you wonder, have they forgotten I'm still here? You push harder. The boulder grinds forward, groaning under its own weight. Above, the mist flickers, shapes writhing within it, tall, luminous figures shouting, gesturing, pointing at you. One day, if this still counts as a day, you stop mid-climb and speak aloud. Is this the endgame, gods? You arguing while I climb? Tell me, who's truly trapped here? The boulder quivers in your hands, as if it senses your defiance. You grin through gritted teeth. Go on, tear each other apart. Prove me right. Historians still argue about how your punishment ended, if it ever did. Some say you finally reached the summit, placed the boulder at the peak, and walked away free. Others claim the gods, weary of their own quarrels, abandoned you entirely, leaving you alone on the hill. No watchers, no whispers, no judgment. But you know the truth. You never needed to leave the hill. You only needed to make it yours. And so you keep pushing, not because they demand it, not because you hope for freedom, but because in this climb, in this endless repetition, you've found something even the gods lack. On purpose. The summit appears through the mist. You shove the boulder the final few feet, every muscle in your body screaming. It teeters at the edge. For a moment, impossibly, it stays. You step back, chest heaving. Did I? You whisper. But before you can finish the thought, the boulder trembles and begins to roll. You don't scream, you don't curse. You just smile. Because now, you understand. The gods' punishment failed. They sought to break you. Instead, they built you into something stronger, something they can no longer control. You turn and begin the descent. The boulder waits at the bottom, as it always does. And as you approach it, you whisper, not to the gods this time, but to yourself. Let's do it again. Above, the voices have gone silent. Perhaps they've stopped watching. Perhaps they're still arguing. Or perhaps, deep down, they fear the truth. That in the end, it wasn't Sisyphus who lost. It was them. The boulder glints faintly in the gray light as you place your hands against it once more. You push, and the hill rises before you, eternal, unchanging. But you're no longer a prisoner. You're the master of this climb. And that is a victory the gods will never understand. The hill softens now, its jagged edges fading into a quiet, endless slope. You feel the rough stone under your palms, but it doesn't bite as it once did. Your breath steadies. Your legs ease into the familiar rhythm. The boulder rolls forward, not with a roar, but with a muted hum, as though even it has grown weary of resisting. The air feels different, too, lighter, quieter. There are no whispers from above, no thunder rumbling through the mist. Perhaps the gods are watching in silence, or perhaps they finally looked away. You let yourself imagine, just for a moment, what it would be like if the climb ended here. No more pushing. No more weight. Just soft grass beneath your feet and a sky unbroken by clouds. But then, almost without thinking, you press forward again, because the climb is no longer there. Punishment. It's your own ritual now, and in this repetition, in this endless, stubborn defiance, you found a strange sort of peace. So you breathe, and you let the rhythm of the climb slow your thoughts. The weight of the stone grounds you. The pull of the earth steadies you. And in this moment, even eternity feels gentle. Perhaps, in the end, this is what victory looks like. Not freedom from the climb, but becoming one with it. You smile faintly as the mist curls around you, soft and cool. The boulder presses forward under your hands, and you let it. Sleep now. There's no rush. You'll push again tomorrow. And the next day. And the next. But for now, rest.